Hello everyone, I'm Bill Allen, the producer of Loren Live VMG. We're glad you're joining us today. Loren's coming to you live on several streaming platforms like Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, followed by a live question and answer session afterwards. Love, comment, share, and tag all of your friends, and get ready to hear from the next governor of Washington State. Hello everyone and welcome. This is Bill Allen, your host for today's broadcast. Loren is going to tell us a little about himself and how he is going to bring common sense to Washington. Before we begin, I want to share with you that the Culp campaign has taken our busy schedule exclusively online through social media. In these broadcasts each week, Loren will be focusing on unique issues facing different regions of the state.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Loren Live. I'm Christopher Gergen. I'm here with Loren Culp, and we're excited that you are here at our virtual meet and greet. We're going to start to do these things regularly, so Loren has the opportunity to communicate with you guys about issues that are on your minds and issues that are important to you. Probably the one issue that is affecting all of us right now more than anything is the stay-at-home order and the COVID-19 issues. And so that's going to be something that we actually discuss today. But before we get into that, Loren, this has been a fantastic week for the campaign. We've received a lot of media coverage this week throughout the state, as well as an AP piece that went out today. And there's a lot wrong with the state, and we could talk all night about all the things that are wrong with the state. But as I mentioned before, the issue that is on people's minds right now is the stay-at-home order and the COVID-19 virus. This week you penned an op-ed piece, and I'd like for you to just talk a little bit about that op-ed piece for those folks who maybe didn't have the opportunity to read it.
Absolutely, Chris. Thanks for hosting this. And yeah, I did write an op-ed piece a couple days ago. Yeah, first of the week, I believe. And I just wanted to get my thoughts out to people about this, about what's going on. And I think that our state is overstepping its bounds. It might be legal for the governor to take these steps and order people to do certain things. I mean, they're common sense things. If you have a cold or you have the flu, they're common sense things that we do all the time. In any virus that's come across our shores. The swine flu, the bird flu, all of the, when Ebola was a scare, they're just common sense things to do. But I think when it comes to an elected public servant, which the governor is, telling us what we're going to do and ordering us to do it with the threat of enforcement, to me, that's crossing the line. That's violating our constitutional rights. And I'm a very strong believer in individual freedom and liberty. The things that he is saying are common sense things, like I just said. That's fine. Have a press conference with the medical professionals. Let us know what they recommend and what we should do and what could be the result if we don't follow them. But it takes it to a whole nother level when we're being ordered to do these things by our public servants. And that's pretty much what my op-ed was about. I talked about the risk that we take as individuals when we get in a car and get on the freeway, right? We know that there are thousands, tens of thousands of people who die from car wrecks every year in this country. But we as individuals are willing to take that risk, because getting around is, one of our basic freedoms that we enjoy. And as an individual, I know whether my business can function during this virus. If I have a private construction contractor, which I used to be for over 20 years, and I have two people on a job site sheeting a roof or putting on siding or hanging windows, I know that they can do it safely and they're not around a bunch of people. Why can't I be open, right? Why can't that business be open? And we have a housing shortage that we hear about all the time. Why is private construction shut down, but government jobs can continue? Why can I go to Walmart and be around maybe 100 or more people, but I can't go to my local business and be around 5 or 10 people? It's the governor mandating what we're going to do, when we're going to do it, and how we're going to do it. And he's picking winners and losers, because these small businesses aren't going to survive if this continues. I mean, a lot of them are on the brink of going bankrupt and out of business right now. And I think that when the governor puts those kind of restrictions on, it's draconian. And that's exactly what I call it in this op-ed piece. There's pot shops and abortion clinics and other things that the governor wants to be open are open, you know, and I'm not talking about pot shops. If people want to smoke pot, it's legal in this state. But why can pot shops be open, but our local cafe can't be open, you know, or the market, um, the lumber yard, you know, things like that. The governor's picking and choosing, and it's draconian. So that's
Yeah,
what my op-ed's about.
yeah, that and it actually got a lot of strong response. I know you and I were talking earlier today about some of the comments that we were receiving, on some of the news channels and so forth, and it seems like um, some people are I think maybe genuinely concerned about things, and they hear someone like you talk about citizen rights, and they don't necessarily know how to feel about it. And then of course you've got that element that is just the wackadoodles that want to obey the government at every turn. Um, but for those people, Loren, that are genuinely concerned about their safety, and maybe they have someone who is an at-risk person, what would you say to these people, given your position on that? Like, how should they handle this situation?
That's where common sense comes into play, and the advice of our medical professionals, right? They say social distancing is what we need to do, but I want to turn that phrase on its head. We don't need social distancing right now. We need physical distancing. You keep the 6 feet if that's what they're recommending. You know, keep that physical distance, but social closeness is really what we need right now. We need to be in contact with our family, with our friends, with our grandparents, you know, elderly friends that we know that shouldn't be out in the public. We need that social closeness, and um, take all the advice from the medical professionals. I'm not a medical professional. Jay Inslee's not a medical professional. If I was governor, I would be on that podium with medical professionals around me, like President Trump does, so that they can get the information out from the experts, the people that know about this stuff. And washing your hands, using hand sanitizer, staying away from people, covering your face. Those are all great things to do, whether it's the flu that we have every year that kills far more people, or whether it's a new virus that comes along.
The president was asked recently, I think it might have even been today, whether or not he would support an order to release nonviolent criminals out of jail. And he was kind of non-committal on it, Lauren, and he said that he would look at it. Um, Recently, Governor Inslee actually stated that this is what he intends to do. Like, this is going to be the angle that he takes on this, with releasing criminals. So, how do you feel about that? And if you were the governor right now, how would you handle this specific situation?
Well, most people probably heard about the riot that was in Monroe facility, the state penitentiary. I believe it was yesterday, the day before, and some prisoners were lighting things on fire, and they got it under control fairly quickly. But Jay's reaction, Inslee's reaction to that is, well, let's let these people out of prison. Well, they're in prison for a reason, right? They have been deemed by the courts to not be safe to be walking around our neighborhoods. So that's why they're in prison. I don't agree with releasing these people, because here's the thing. If you or I, as law-abiding citizens, go out and violate this order, we have the threat of the governor's law either fining us or putting us in jail, right? Because we're out and might spread the virus. So we have the threat of either a fine or being arrested. But on the other hand, he's going to let people out of prison to be out in the populace. So if we can't be out walking around because we might spread the virus or get the virus, and we need to be locked up in our homes or our apartments, then why can't prisoners stay in prison, serve their sentence, and ride this out just like people that are in their apartment complex? That's my take on it.
Yeah.
What's the big deal? They can sit in their cell just like I can sit in an apartment if I live in an apartment somewhere, and do the same thing.
Right, exactly. Um, just a technical thing here, Bill. If you could turn up Lauren's volume, if that's possible, because I'm seeing some feedback from the chat saying that they're having difficulty hearing Lauren. Uh, Along those same lines, the one question that we get from Facebook repeatedly, probably more often than we get any other question, Lauren, is if you were governor right now, how would you handle this situation? I think you talked a little bit about that um, earlier, but one thing that you didn't mention is how the governor is handling the fishing situation and being outdoors. And
Right.
could you talk just a little bit about how you would handle that aspect of it?
Right. Well, to me, that's just because he lacks common sense. You know, there are thousands of lakes and rivers and streams all across this state. Not to mention the ocean and Puget Sound and the Strait of Juan de Fuca. Um, why close down fishing, for crying out loud? People need to have something to do, and people are getting sick and tired of being in their homes. Um, so, but there's a pattern, right? If you look back at anytime take a budget crisis, for example, anytime there's a budget crisis, what do? What do the public servants in government do? They shut down the park system. They shut down anything that's going to benefit the citizens so that it hurts them the most. And they'll put pressure on their legislators to get whatever budget they want passed, right? And that's what they do. And so shutting down the parks, shutting down state land, shutting down boat ramps, it's just another kick in the teeth to the citizens, as far as I'm concerned. People know what to do. They don't have to have a nanny in the governor's seat, for crying out loud. If it's recommended that I'm 6 feet away from someone, well, then I can stand 6 feet away from someone and fish, just like I can stand 6 feet away from someone in frickin' Walmart. It's absolutely stupid. And it's pissing me off, and it's pissing off a lot of other people. It's not necessary. It's just Jay Inslee thinking he's a little dictator.
I was in an elevator earlier today, and the guy next to me, my mind was just on other things, campaign things. And the guy next to me, how most people are usually quiet when they're in an elevator, and the guy, he just blurts out, he says, it's kind of hard to be 6 feet away when you're stuck in an elevator. And I thought
Exactly.
to myself, wow, that's like, I looked at him and I was like, wow, I never had actually thought about that. Like, there's so many things that we're allowed to do, quote unquote, allowed. All right. We're told by the government, you're allowed to do this. One of them is ride in an elevator. You could have 4 people in an elevator, and unless you're in the largest elevator in the world, there's no way you're going to be able to be 6 feet away from that person. And so I think that there's just a lack of consistency with the governor's policies. Is that really kind of what you're saying?
Well, yeah, exactly. And that just goes to show you the stupidity and the lack of common sense that are involved in his decision making. I don't know. I'm just sick and tired of our elected public servants, and that's what they are. They're not elected officials. We are the officials. We, the people, are the officials, right? We're the electing officials. And these people that are in office are put there by us to serve us, to run our government. And the governor is put in there to be the chief executive of the state of Washington, to run the state government, not dictate to me whether I can stand on the bank of a river or a lake and fish. I mean, how did we get here? How did we get here in America? I'm not advocating for people to go out and be stupid, but I am advocating for them to realize that their freedoms are being taken away. Can you imagine our forefathers if they were alive right now? It's like they just fought a revolution 200 and some years ago to free us from this type of draconian control. They had the Boston Tea Party for a 2-cent tax on tea. It was a revolt. And here we are having the governor tell us that we can't go outside into the woods, go to the state park, which belongs to the citizens of Washington state. We can't launch our boat at a state boat ramp because of a virus that has so far killed far less people than the flu that we have every single winter. How did we get here? This is like we're living on the planet of the apes. We need to wake up and realize that our governor thinks that he's a dictator. I don't know how else to put it.
I have had a lot of conversations over the last year, and one of the things I know that we've talked about in the past is how our freedoms slip away. They typically don't slip away all at one time, right? It's like the frog in the pot, and I think we're at a point in history, and if please share with me if you agree with this or disagree with this. I think we're at a point in history where the water is starting to boil a little bit, starting to get a little bit warm in there, and I think the frog is starting to wake up. And I think that has been one of the driving forces behind your popularity as a candidate. So as we kind of switch gears a little bit, I want to segue into this to just say that you and I both know when you started this campaign, you and I talked. I had a conversation with Ted Nugent. Ted Nugent said, "Hey, you need to call Loren Culp," and I was like, "Who's this Loren Culp guy?" And Ted said, "Hey, you remember the chief of police that told the governor to shove it in Washington?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that was great." And he goes, "That's Loren Culp. You need to call him." When we started, Loren, literally we started at zero, and you had no real name ID. You'd done a little bit of national TV media around the 1639 thing. And then if you flash forward to where we are today in April, you have built a fantastic grassroots movement, a true grassroots movement across this state that has seen more individual donors than any of our other opponents, any of our other Republican opponents, by a 2-to-1 margin. You look at our social media, you've got a 2-to-1, 3-to-1 advantage, 4-to-1 over some of them, over your Republican opponents. So what do you think it is? What do you think it is that has really caused this campaign to explode and for people to really gravitate towards you and towards the message that you're sharing?
Well, yeah, the growth has been phenomenal, and I am so humbled by it. I don't know, other than just I'm one of the people. I ran my own business for 20 years. I'm a military veteran. I've been a police officer for 10 years. Narcotics detective for a few years. I know what's going on at the ground level with these problems that Washington State is dealing with. I think that I have a background that my opponents wish that they had, with military, with private business owner for over 20 years, and in law enforcement. I'm a dad of 2 grown men and the grandpa of 7, and they all live here in Washington State. I've personally, I have a lot at stake here. My grandkids are growing up here. I'm probably looking to be a great grandpa here in a few years. They're getting older.
Great grandfather. Slow down there.
It could happen. Yeah, my oldest granddaughter is about to graduate from high school, and she's been in the Running Start program actually, and she's going to have a 2-year college degree too. Graduation.
That's fantastic.
And
Congratulations on that. That's great.
But I have a lot at stake, and I'm just a normal person. I'm not a politician, and I think that is what people like. People that I talk to, and myself, I'm sick and tired of politicians. I'm sick and tired of them telling me one thing when they want my vote or want my campaign contribution, and then they get into office and it's the same crap over and over and over, and nothing changes. And I think it's time for just common people to run for office, and we're seeing a lot of that happening. A lot of non-career politicians running for office, and getting a lot of support because we're coming from the people, the hardworking blue collar people. That's me. I'm a hunter. I'm a fisherman. I've done logging. I've done construction. I've done land clearing. I've been a heavy equipment operator. I'm just a working man. And I was thrown into the national spotlight because I opened my mouth and stood up for citizens' rights as the chief of police back in 2018 over the anti-gun initiative. And that's what led me to have people starting asking me to run for governor. And that's why I finally took it serious in July of last year and decided. But I think that the reason we're getting such grassroots support is just because I stand for what most Americans and most Washingtonians do, and that's God, family, and country in that order.
Well, that's very well said. What I like to do is just tell all of you that are out there in virtual land, we're going to start taking questions here in just a minute. We do have a couple questions, and so I would like to share. Let me see. Let me find a couple questions. I saw some of them. We've got so many comments that they're like swinging by here, and I'm trying to find a couple of questions here. So let's see here.
I remember from the last live that we did, I attempted to stay up with the comments, but yeah, they kind of go by kind of fast.
Right, absolutely. And I'm not the brightest candle on the cake, so I'm having difficulty keeping up here. So let's see. I thought I saw a really good one, and let's see if people are asking questions here. All right, so here's one from Mike Mathis says, he's asking, are you gonna, I think he's trying to say repeal or upheal the gun bill. So could you talk a little bit about what can be done about, and I'm assuming he's talking about 1639. So what, if anything, can you do about 1639 once you're elected governor?
Well, the governor's not a dictator, and we don't want him to be, right? No matter how hard Jay Inslee tries to be a dictator, the governor is not a dictator. And so to get a law repealed would require an initiative, the courts, or the legislature and a governor to sign it. And I will be a very loud voice for the people when it comes to getting unconstitutional laws overturned. I will let the citizens know what's going on, know the details of what's in these laws, and put pressure on the legislature from the governor's office and use the podium of the governor to get the information out so that citizens can put pressure on their representatives to get these kind of things overturned if the courts do not.
So here's a question from Jim. He asks, what is the first thing you'll do as governor?
Day one, I am going to have, before day one, as soon as we get over the hump in November and we have won, then I'm going to start compiling a list and have my team working on it of regulations that are unnecessary in this state, because the governor doesn't need the legislature to reduce regulations. And I know, as a private business owner for over 20 years, that regulations and taxes are strangling small business especially. And so day one, I'm going to have a whole list of regulations from every department that we're going to eliminate. And we're going to continue on that from the very beginning. We don't need, when's the last time that anyone that lives in this state ever heard of taxes and regulations going down, right? Never, ever. Taxes continually go up and regulations continue to pile on individuals and businesses. And so right from day one, that's one thing that we can do.
Jeremy wants to know, what will you do about illegal immigration? And I'm assuming he probably wants to know how you feel about the sanctuary state as well. Could you address that?
Absolutely. Governor Inslee signed into law that Washington State is a sanctuary for people who enter this country illegally. And he signed that last summer into law. First of all, I want to cover this. I want everyone to know that anytime a bill comes across my desk as governor, there's 3 tests that it has to pass or I will veto it. Number 1, is it constitutional? Right? The Constitution is the rule book for our government. Number 2, is it good for the citizens of Washington State? Because the government works for us, right? Not the other way around. And number 3, can we afford it without any new taxes? And if it doesn't pass any of those 3, I will veto it. But as far as the sanctuary state, it has been passed into law. The legislature sent it to the governor's desk. He signed it. And I would never sign that piece of legislation. I would veto it immediately. What that does is it makes it against the law for your local police, your local sheriff, your local jail to inform the federal government that there is a criminal about to be released from your local jail, put back into your local community, that is an illegal alien. So not only did that person break the law to get into this country and into this state, but they committed a crime in your local community and got put in your local jail, and they're about to be released back into the community, your community. And your local law enforcement cannot let the federal government know that, or they are breaking the law. And that makes absolutely no sense to me. The thing that is the biggest problem with this is it's about public safety. You know, you're releasing criminals that aren't even here legally. They should be sent home. They should be sent back to where they came from if they can't follow our laws. That's how I feel about sanctuary state.
Well, that's pretty clear. There's no wishy-washy on that. Miss Becky wants to know, what are your plans with reducing property taxes? As far as, you know, a lot of property taxes are issued at the state level, but what, if anything, can the governor's office do to reduce property taxes? You know, because that's something that has really hurt a lot of homeowners and business owners as well, is just the skyrocketing taxes. So what are your plans on dealing with the property tax crisis that we have here in Washington?
Property taxes increases all the time. And they just had a huge increase in it. Some people saw 30, 40, 50, 60% increase in the property taxes. This state goes through $52 to $53 billion every year. That's the state budget. That's absolutely, it is unbelievable.
That's a lot of tacos, I'll tell you.
That is a lot of hardworking Washingtonians' money.
Yep.
You know, the government doesn't produce anything. The government doesn't make any money. The state of Washington takes from hardworking citizens and then spends it. I believe that the citizens of Washington state can decide what to do with their money better than the government can, right? There's some basic functions the government needs to do, but it is by far overreaching and taxing the crap out of people. And it's not just property taxes. It's every tax and fee. I mean, you have to buy a Discover Pass to go out in the woods. Really? Are we in America? Or do we live in North Korea that everything belongs to the dictator?
Absolutely. So Victoria asked, you know, what are your plans on taxes? You just talked about that, but let me ask you a question along the lines of taxes. So maybe this will be kind of an addendum to what she was asking. How do you feel about a state income tax, and what would you do about it if it came across your desk?
The state income tax is unconstitutional. It said, it's explicit in the Washington State Constitution that we will not have an income tax, and I will not sign anything into law that would implement a income tax. And in fact, I would push back the other direction, which a lot of politicians don't, right? They just don't push back the other direction. But I think that it would be a good idea to make it very, very clear in our Constitution that there will never be a state income tax. We are taxed enough. We don't need more taxes.
Deborah asked the question. Let's shift gears just a little bit. Go from taxes to this comprehensive sex ed bill for children, which is what they are, children, ages kindergarten through 12th grade. Deborah says Governor Inslee just signed into law the comprehensive sex education K through 12. The teaching is explicit beginning at kindergarten. What are your views on this?
Hundreds, if not into the thousands, of people showed up to protest that at the Capitol steps, and Jay Inslee signed it anyway. It used to be that carrots, cucumbers, and bananas were part of a healthy diet, but now they're talked about with school children as them being sex toys. That's absolutely ridiculous. Who would want this taught to their children? Nobody that I know. And I encourage parents to be very blunt with their school administrators when they tell them that they do not want their children taught this in the classroom. They can opt out, and make sure that they do opt out.
So we've started to get a lot of support out in the Spokane region. We actually already had a lot of support, but we've started to really do a lot of work out there, Loren. And we've got actually a question from Kelly out there in the Spokane area. She asked, what are your plans for Spokane, like specifically about forest resources, roads, gas tax, and so forth? Could you talk a little bit about, and I know some of these things, it's not just Spokane. I mean, those things affect the whole state. So, forestry, roads, gas taxes, could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have one of the highest gas taxes in the United States, if not the highest. It's ridiculous. I mean, gas prices would be well under $2 right now if it wasn't for such a high gas tax, which is supposed to go to fix our roads, which are in a shambles. But as far as forestry goes, we need to manage our forest lands like we used to do 20 years ago. Jay Inslee runs around talking about global climate change as a cause for catastrophic wildfires that we've seen, right? I think in the last 10 years, there's been 2 or 3 times more large wildfires than there were the 10 years prior to that. And there's 2 causes to wildfires, either man-made or lightning, right? Other than that, I can't think of any way that a forest fire would start. So, but the problem is we don't manage our forest lands like we used to. We used to log them, we used to replant them, we used to thin them and clean up all the carbon on the forest floor after we're done. The problem is that we haven't done that in a long time. We don't do it at the extent that we used to do it, for sure. And that's what causes these catastrophic wildfires that burn houses, kill people, and animals. And it's because they burn so hot. There's so much fuel. And we need to get back to managing our forest land. And that increases revenue to the state, which would help with schools as well.
Absolutely. I've actually seen in the comments here several questions. Several people have asked how you feel about the $30 car tabs. And, I don't know anybody. In fact, at all the meet and greets I've ever been to with you, Loren, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, I want to pay more than $30, right? I think everybody agrees that $30 car tabs is a good thing. But how do you feel about how the state has handled that situation?
It's absolutely disgusting how they've handled it. The judge that ruled on that. And by the way, I don't know why we have to stop at $30. What's wrong with $20, right? The lower the taxes, the better it is for the citizens. But the judge ruled on that it could not be implemented because there was a lawsuit. Well, in 2018 or 2019, there was a lawsuit against 1639. The semi-automatic ban. There was a lawsuit, but they implemented that anyway. It's hypocritical. That's all.
Absolutely. Let's see. Let's take one more question. Let's see here. Going through a lot of questions about taxes, gas taxes. Let's see. Let's see. Hey, Whatcom County's in the house. Let's see.
Hello,
here.
Whatcom County.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ben Zapori has a question. What about the new laws that give salmon rights just as humans? Now homeowners on rivers are kind of in a pinch. Will you take care of that? So basically fishing rights and so forth. So how are you going to handle the fishing and the wildlife and that entire debacle that has come down?
Well, this state used to be a destination state for fishing and hunting. I know when I was growing up in the 70s, my grandpa was a commercial fisherman. My other grandpa was a sport fisherman. And so I spent a lot of time out in the water. I spent a lot of time in Puget Sound around the San Juan Islands fishing. And I think that maybe we have people in government that don't really care about that. I think that's really obvious, right? So what we need to do is get focused back on that, make that a priority, which I will as governor. We need to increase the hatchery output. I think 100% would probably be a good start, and then maybe build some more hatcheries. But we need to get the fish back in our streams, back in the ocean. We need to take care of predators. There's sea lions everywhere and birds that eat the salmon. And we need to work on habitat. These wildfires that happen, they cause silt to get in the rivers. And that causes problems with the spawning grounds. Salmon need clean gravel, open gravel to spawn. And if our streams are plugged up, we need to get in there and fix that. So habitat, predators, and hatchery output. Those are three things that we need to take care of as far as that goes.
Fantastic. Well, before we go, can you share with the folks why their financial support is so important and how they can contribute and get involved with the campaign?
Absolutely. Yeah. If someone wants to volunteer, they can send an email to info@culpforgovernor.com and let us know where you're at and what you want to do. And if you need a sign, you can do the same thing. And then we always need financial support. It's going to take a lot of money to go up against the far left liberal machine that Jay Inslee's got behind him. We're not going to need to raise as much as he did. President Trump didn't raise as much as Hillary and still beat her because he had the grassroots support, which we have. But if people can afford to, I know this is a rough time. So I don't, unlike the liberal Democrat presidential candidate, Elizabeth Warren, I don't want your last $10. But if you're in a position and you can afford to donate, you can go to our website at culpforgovernor.com and click the donate button. And it would be very much appreciated. We've got, like I said, I think if you want signs, send an email. We've got swag, we've got shirts, cups. In fact, I've got one of the Culp for Governor cups right here that I've been sipping on. They're available on the Facebook page or on the website too. Every one of those things that people buy that they can use, that helps the campaign as well. But we definitely need the support.
Okay, Loren, thank you very much for spending about 45 minutes with the folks. Now you're going to be back tomorrow, same time, same place, right? Tomorrow night?
Absolutely. Yes. Tomorrow night at 6:30. And I'm going to kind of throw something out here that you're not ready for, Chris.
Oh, you're scaring me now. I'm already be bald, Loren.
This just happened about 15 minutes before we went on live. And if anybody listening has been to my in-person meet and greets, I almost always talk about a young man named John, who I helped, and we didn't talk too much about the homeless crisis and the drug addiction and mental health, but John may be joining us, if not tomorrow night, maybe another night, and tell his story. Yeah.
That's powerful. That's really fantastic. I'm actually very, very happy to hear that, and that's a great surprise. And Well, that's great. So I look forward. Tomorrow is going to be totally different than tonight. So don't think that you're just going to tune in and hear the same things. So be sure to jump on here tomorrow when we go live. So once again, Mr. Culp, thank you very much for joining us. It is a pleasure to work with you and to work for you. And I don't think I've ever worked for a candidate that I supported completely 100% the way that I do you. And I'm deeply grateful for that opportunity. I also want to say thank you to Bill Allen and his lovely wife, Lisa, our technical folks on the back end, Shannon Halls, Nick Culp, bunch of great people out in the field that are doing a lot of great work. Getting literally, we have literally put out thousands of yard signs over the course, which is just unbelievable over the course of this campaign. And so, Loren, you have a great team that loves you very much, and a lot of great supporters. So thank you very much for being here and spending some time with us.
You bet. And one last thing, if everyone would please share our posts on Facebook, Culp for Governor on Facebook, and help me get the word out, because that's what it's going to take, getting the word out and letting people know what I stand for. And we're going to do this. God bless you all, and thank you all for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Thanks for watching.